All right. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining the webinar. I'm Sean Cordner. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Amplix. This is Demystifying the Shift, how to move from legacy voice bots to GenAI-Powered CX. I'm joined by a panel of experts today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves, starting with John.
Hey, great to meet you all. And Sean, thank you for having me. My name's John McMullen. I lead the AI agent marketing at Observe.AI, where we've launched AI agents for chat and voice channels and really have been at the forefront of driving a entire solution around contact center visibility and transparency.
Excellent. And Mike, how about you?
Hey everyone, Mike Doloff. Glad to be with you today too. I lead our sales and account management organization at Amplix. We're a technology advisory firm. And I personally have worked in the contact center CX technology space for the last 15 years or so. So get a look at a broad view and help our clients with a lot of categories of technology, but really excited to be focused on this conversational AI topic today, because this is where we're having a ton of conversations guiding a lot of clients right now.
Excited to have you both. A lot of expertise and experience here in the room. So that is good, because I'm decidedly not an expert in these spaces, but I am good enough to ask some questions. Before I do that, if you indulge me, I'm just going to set the stage here. We've all had bad experiences with voice AI in the past. It used to be this kind of rigid and frustratingly limited IVR, and then AI-driven voice bots started to give you a more conversational way to navigate phone trees and phone tree options. But that was almost worse, because it gave you the illusion of having more flexibility and being able to have a conversation, but it was actually similarly constrained and annoyingly bad at understanding you. And it made for really bad experiences. I want to read a few stats here. With 50% of businesses, 50% of businesses are expecting call volumes to rise by up to 20% in the next 12 to 24 months. And that comes from McKinsey. And 32% of customers are ready to switch brands after just one bad experience. And that's PwC. Also, I'll point out, we live in a social media world, and people are terminally online. Bad experiences spread like wildfire online. So I used to be a chef, and in the restaurant business, we'd say one good experience and they'll tell one person, one bad experience and they'll tell 10 people. These days, a tweet complaining about your brand could be seen by thousands, or could go viral and be seen by millions. So the stakes are really high to get it right. And LLM-powered AI voice solutions are changing the game. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So to start, the first question here, John, what were the core limitations of those early AI voice solutions, and why have so many of them fallen short of expectations when executed?
Yeah, I mean, great question in terms of understanding why now is different. I've been around, and Mike, you mentioned your experience. I got my start in the CX space as a conversational designer about 14, 15 years ago. And in that role, my job was strictly to map intent and what looked like a spider web on the wall of, when customers talking about this, here's all the conversations or topics that could fit into the saying hello. Here's all the things around making a payment. And you ended up with this giant spreadsheet, essentially, of all the different things that went into that. Because you never know what a customer is going to say. They use their own language, they have their own terminology. It never perfectly matches what you want. And part of the limitations of yesteryear and some of this legacy technology is that it was fundamentally intent mapping. Even with the advancements in AI, I'd say up until 2022, when LLMs really caught fire at the Chat GPT moment, you had to map this all out and either fuzzy match or use some advanced NLP, natural language understanding, natural language processing, to continue that conversation. And then once you understood and could process what they're asking about, it was typically linear, meaning once you got put on a path that was starting a payment, sticking with that use case, we assumed, building these flows, that they were going to do these steps in this order. But just as this conversation is sure to go off the rails in the best of way, customers may ask about different topics along the way. Hey, I need to make a payment. But by the way, I also need to order checks. I also need to do X, Y, and Z. And so why things fell short is it was very step and process oriented. You had to understand the intents and everything around that intent, map out the flows, steps 1 through 10, 50, or however many are in your SOP. And then try to get that into production with all the technology challenges. LLMs have upended that, so that you don't need to put in all of that groundwork, but instead can actually hold the conversation. And now the challenge has kind of shifted to more real-time human-like conversation and how to actually make that fit within a flow. Mike, curious what you think about that. And I know you've seen a lot of this world, but that's kind of where I came from and how I've seen this evolution take place up until today.
No, totally. I think you're spot on. And what the sum of what you described on this kind of first attempt at AI, kind of more scripted conversational AI or AI, voice AI, has been the administrative overhead of this has been huge, right? Because you got to spend a lot of time to, like you said, and even then, it's this constant tuning of, oh, yeah, we see all these people are falling out here. Why are they falling out? Oh, we didn't even think of how wording it that way. And again, that's all just on a very linear path. So just sort of so I think a lot of people have been sort of, wow, this is a lot of work. I thought it was going to be easier, right? Sort of journey. Or, wow, we did one use case that only took us 2 years to get it all fully dialed in. Now let's move to the next one. So the speed of being able to kind of get those benefits they're hoping for has just not been there as well. I think also sort of tying onto that, you think of the expense of that from hey, I've got a team and I've got a lot of people, I've got a lot of resources behind to sort of continually get this thing better and better and better. And then we'll talk more about, it's not like it's not like the Ron Popeil set and forget on the new stuff either. There's stuff that has to be done, but it fundamentally changes somewhere you have to put your effort, and the speed at which you can move is greatly reduced from prior. I think too, the first wave of this, everyone was suffering a little bit from kind of generational trauma on self-service too, right? Because everyone was used to like the promise of IVR that's been around for 20 plus years, right? Of like, this is going to do everything. It's going to be awesome. And we've all been in IVR hell at multiple times in our lives as consumers. And you're like, this is the worst design I've ever experienced. Layer after layer. It's voice only, but it doesn't understand anything. And I've got background noise and it starts me over. The touch tones don't, I mean, there's already this sort of like reticence that this stuff is going to work. And then so people have seen this AI, this first generation stuff, and they're like, well, this seems like it's a little bit better, but it's still a lot of work. And we still have a lot of these problems because we're asking questions and, we're doing what humans do, which is zig and zag in our conversations. And this thing's looking for a straight line. So it's still not great, So I think, there's this kind of trauma that people have to overcome around this too, of like believing, but so we're here to tell you today, it is a different world, right? Like, cause it really is. It is not like we've all used to the hype trains that are like way up here and then they crash. And so, everyone's kind of scared about that, but no, it is a different world. And I think you've lived it more than anyone, John, being in the trenches of spending your day to day building a lot of these things.
I think what makes a bad experience is when someone has an expectation of how something's going to work or how something's going to happen, and then that expectation is not met. And, when you dealt with the old phone trees and you had to press a button, press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for that, you're kind of in this mode that you are going down that linear path, right? It does kind of feel like a process. It doesn't feel natural. Then when you start introducing a conversational element to that, it takes you out of that, right? And our brains are predictive modeling machines. And so you've got a mental model of how things work, but that there is no mental model for how that conversation is going to play out. When I talk to you, Mike and John, I don't feel like there's any constraints in the way that I converse with you. I don't have anything that I have to navigate there, right? But on the back end of those IVRs, there are constraints, but I don't have any kind of affordance or indication of what those constraints may be. So I have to just blindly walk through the maze and bump into a wall with my face to find out that that's not the right way to go. And that creates a bad experience, and it makes people extremely frustrated. And people, as we've got more online and we've got these devices in our hands, right, we have less patience to do things. We want instantaneous gratification. So I think that really kind of set things up for bad experiences and creating that generational trauma that you're talking about. But Mike, what has changed in the last 12 to 24 months that makes the new voice technology more viable and a better investment with less likelihood of creating those bad experiences?
Yeah. So in the last, say 24 months, the whole world shifted from this very scripted, structured responses, very precise like really the only kind of core use cases that worked really well were these kind of like very predictable FAQ type of things, a lot of maintenance on this, to like the concept of generative AI, right? So now you've got this very human-like, this very natural, you can bring in contextual relevance into these conversations. And so now you can have a much more kind of open-ended virtual agent experience. And again, this is where LLMs come into play. There's still absolutely tuning and guardrails and things that have to happen. But this now is much more, the technology kind of much more mirrors the potential of what a human is doing naturally. And you're not having to sort of pre-program every single step of this journey. You can put some things in here that it knows how to respond to the curveball, which we're inevitably going to be throw it, versus saying, let's say, think of like if we were interfacing at the store with somebody in line and we were talking about one thing and asking questions about this thing, and they're handling it. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, you know what? I need to also get this. In that scripted, kind of world, they'd be like, go get in the back of the line and come back and we'll start this thing over again. Right. Versus now the in person, they're like, oh yeah, hold on one second. Let me finish. And then I'll handle that. And it's just very conversational and what we're used to. And we know this because we're using this, right? If you're not even in contact center, right? You're using all of these different models. You're using ChatGPT and other programs where you're seeing the power of what this is, where it can really have a conversation with you, if it's in chat. And voice is very much the same way now. Most people I don't think have experienced it to the same extent, but that's the change. And now, of course, we have, and I don't want to steal, right? John's got a lot to add, but now you're getting to the next pace where you have generative, in addition to sort of scripted, you've got now generative, and now you've got agentic, right? Where you're adding yet another potential, which is take all that goodness of generative, but add in the ability to kind of really problem solve and reason and have these kind of stacked together tasks and workflows or actions that are needed to handle that. So it's not just give me information back and help me, but maybe there's things that can happen and it can workflow and solve those things for me. So we're talking about very, very different from this linear structure to this whole, I can have the software now solving problems and working on solutions for me. Massive change. It's like my neck, I don't know about you, John, my neck hurts from all this in the last 24 months.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's whiplash or just like trying to lean forward into it, because
Yeah.
it's been a wild time. I'll take even a shorter time frame, right? What's changed in the last 6 to 12 months here? And Mike, I think you covered, the real aha moment. Chat GPT blew the doors open on what's possible with generative. And companies have raced to play with it, adopt it, and are now trying to find use cases for it. The Chat GPT, like speech to speech mode, where you have your own little assistant that can answer anything's phenomenal. But what has changed in the last 6 to 12 months is now you can actually make that around your business. And you mentioned things like guardrails. This type of technology is rapidly advancing of, okay, how do you get to a point where it only knows my business and the data is grounded in truth? How can we pick different voices and personalities and workflows where the latency is now that of a generative assistant? So when you mention agentic, right, it's memory, context, tools, and planning on top of generative. So it can not only converse, but it can actually call your Salesforce system. It can enrich the conversation. And we've seen some major breakthroughs here just in terms of handling latency with being able to pull these tools, pull that context, and do it in milliseconds, where, technology even 2-3 years ago, an API call would be, a half a second. But when we're having a conversation like this, if I stalled out for a half a second, it sounds unnatural. Now all of that infrastructure is catching up with the way that generative has moved. And it's actually pretty incredible, just some of these breakthroughs that are happening here in the past, couple quarters.
It is incredible. And, we've talked about the technology and how it's changed and evolved, but let's put a fine point on how have these advancements, you know, reduced the friction that a user, a customer can feel when they make contact with your contact center. And how does that contribute to reducing churn?
Yeah, Mike, I liked your example, right? Of you get to the front of the line, and if you don't follow the linear flow, get back to the back of the line and wait again. You'd press escape or slam zero on an IVR. As we see more organizations roll this out, whether it's to replace the IVR with intelligent routing, meaning that your AI agent is handling the information, capturing intent and key conversation, and then landing you on a subject matter's desk right away with a warm transfer, or just owning a node off the IVR, meaning, hey, we know there's a lot of questions around billing or FAQs like when's the office open, or can I reschedule my appointment? I go back to a conversation I had a few years ago, really before this all took off, with a contact center leader, and we were talking about chicken or egg problem. All of the calls that she managed spiked during lunchtime and right before dinner time, and they had hard hours around that. And the chicken or egg is that because people are expecting long wait times and calling in on their breaks or drives home, and therefore you have to staff it, or is that because your staffing problem isn't addressing those off hour questions? And really, I think to your question, Sean, how is this improving the experience, reducing friction, reducing churn? People are delightfully surprised. I hear it on calls for customers that we've deployed with, where within the first ring, a human-like voice shows up, is able to answer, up to 60% of containment calls, general topics, or transfer to a subject matter expert, totally frictionless. The surprise in that tone flip, where you don't have to go to the back of the line, don't have to slam zero and yell agent over and over again. You actually just download your information on this AI agent, get what you need, or get to the right human much faster. Totally changes expectations in customers' mind. And you can hear that inflection change in these transcripts, in those conversations. You see CSAT tick up for even the most routine calls, even, where people are expecting to go to battle for 45 minutes waiting on hold. They're now actually being able to at least express frustration and then get to the problem solving much quicker. So yeah, it really is, it's upending the expectations you talked about, Sean, where people want to be heard. That's why they're picking up the phone to call. And when you can do that right away in a frictionless manner, it again resets what is possible, kind of in the CX happy path.
Yeah, it lets you meet people where they're at when they need the support, and gives them the ability to do the things that they want to do without the heavy constraints. But I'll even give you just, the example that makes me shudder the most, that really kind of drove me crazy, is when you would call into the old model, and it would say, tell me what you want to do today. You can say things like pay your bill, check your balance, ask for a credit. And that I don't want to do any of those things. So I say what I want to do. It's like, sorry, I can't, I don't understand that. Say that again. It's like, so then I say it in another way. And then I say it in another way and in another way. And then next thing you know, I'm screaming at this thing that, there's no point in me screaming at, but it's totally ruined my experience. Just the fact that I can use my natural language, I can use the way that I say things, and it can understand me and intuit what I'm trying to accomplish, and route me in the right direction, I think is a great example of how it reduces friction, even in the margins that start off as a small little bit of friction that ends up turning into a disaster.
100% right. My fridge is broken. Oh, you can say it in one word. You're like, no, help me, please help me. As long as you match one of my 7 known words, I can help you. Outside of that, good luck.
Exactly.
One,
So
can I add
yeah,
one thing on that?
yeah,
So it's interesting because you are seeing here. This is one of the most common things I see, and I don't know, John, if you see this in projects too with clients, where because so many times people get on, this virtual agent engages them, and they're so used to being like, this is a blocker, get me through to human, that they say, look, just let me talk to a person. I'm not even going to bother with you. And so a very common sort of initial sort of start for a lot of the virtual agents now is like, hey, not a problem. I can get you to someone. So I get you to the right person. Can you let me know what you're calling about so I can guide you there? And then most of the time it starts helping them because the person just wants help and they're just used to not being helped and being blocked. But so that sort of escalation by design principle is really important, I think, in these, but you can lower the guard, lower the temperature. And look, if somebody needs to talk, get them to someone, right? But we're so trained to know that this is going to be a bad experience that we're not even listening to. And then we start going, and all of a sudden, I know I have people, and I know you've seen this too, John, where people are like saying please and thank you to a virtual agent, right? Because we're just like, we're now comfortable and having a conversation, and we're just like minding our P's and Q's, right? And we're just doing this, and we're saying that to software, to a robot, right? But that's where the level of things have increased to. But you still have a lot of people very wary of this. But I think, like the end that we're seeing when this is done right, I think, is like, you can reduce the cost of interaction, but not do that at a way where your CSAT goes along with it. Like, oh, we reduced cost of interaction and our customers hate us. That is not, at the end of the day, most businesses can't afford that kind of scenario, right? Unless you have a monopoly. But
I'm
we are
def-
seeing these ones where you can see that cost reduction with the CSAT improvement.
Oh,
Let alone all the downstream impacts of this too, right? Your agents aren't dealing with like the complete mind-numbing FAQ type of things over and over that are just like 30-second call over and over answering the same kind of thing. Like that's all taken off their plate. So you got them getting better. You can focus more on QA and quality there. They're not turning over because they're like, I can't spend another 8 hours at this job doing this mind-numbing stuff. So we're seeing that happen now, right? So it's super exciting to get data back from clients now where it's like, hey, our cost per interaction went down. We reduced handle time because we're taking some of these things off. Or sometimes in some cases, handle time went up because we're doing more sophisticated things, but these other metrics. So it's like, we're seeing that happen. And sort of like, that's why I think people are wary too, because it's like truly is a sort of win-win, right? Done right, it is the win-win of customer gets what they want quicker. You guys talked about meet them where they're at, get them, don't be blocking, all these things. Customers happier, companies happier because we have cost that is not linear constantly with interaction growth or business growth. And agents are happier because they're not dealing with some of the stuff that's like, why are we not having this handled by technology that can handle that, right? So anyways, that's why people I think are wary too. They're like, it sounds too good to be true. Where's the catch? You know?
where is the catch? Why isn't everyone adopting this?
Well, it's a good question. I think the focus, a lot of it comes down to basic things, right? Focus and priority being a big one. There's so, like we talked about this, truly the world in this space has turned on its head in the last 24 months. It is like a lot of people don't know, like, wow, is this real? Okay, it's real. Where do I start? How do I focus on this? What we've seen too is the contact center is often ground zero of a lot of this stuff too. So they have to be the ones pushing the envelope internally with IT around governance and data hygiene and data, all the sort of data security conversation things. So some of it is like focus and priority, but also these things are kind of making the company evolve and mature. So that's some of it, right? But that's not a blocker at this point for most people. I think along with that, a lot of these are very basic things, but it's like, how do I build a business case for this? This is all new stuff for most companies. How do I think about this and make the case for this? And what does this look like? There's not a density yet of success stories overall in people's kind of market that they're aware of. There are in the market at large, but within their sphere of what they understand the market, they don't have that context yet. So, and frankly, this is where we're often helping, right? Like, let's build a business case around this. Here's some things to think about. Another one, I think a lot of times people like, hey, our data's just not clean. And like a lot of people use this excuse of data, right? Like, oh, well, it's, and look, this stuff is driven off of data for sure. But I think a lot of times, like you're letting, what's the right word? Good be the enemy of great or whatever the saying,
yeah.
right? Like basically like you can start on these journeys for sure. Do you need to do other stuff simultaneously? Yes, with data, but you can start on this. With most companies, there's enough data to really absolutely pinpoint where to start, have data to sort of make the decisioning and stuff like that. And I think the last one for me is this is self-inflicted. There's so much market noise, right? And I always bust Sean's chops because he's a marketer, right? I'm like, marketers ruin everything, right? Like they create all this noise and this stuff. And it's true, like, nobody knew what generative AI was 3 years ago, really. And now agentic AI and all these terms and product names that come along with it. And there's tons of players and they all say they do these things. That's just noise. And I think there's definitely a sense of sort of analysis paralysis or just like, decision fatigue. There's so many things. And it's not like, oh, I could buy from company A or B. It's like, oh, my CRM can do this, but my contact center can do that. But then there's point solutions here. And it's like coming from all angles too. It's like to the degree, somebody was saying, I don't know, John, if it was you or someone else, but it's like, they're like, it's like, it's almost like a law was passed, that no one signed off on, but it's a universal law that if you don't say AI or say it in your company, that's it. You're breaking a law somewhere. So it's like, it's everywhere. And so it's like all that noise, I think, is just completely like confused people. So those are some of the reasons I've seen. John, I'm sure you could add some or tell me I'm wrong too.
No, I'll double down on that. And you took some of my thunder, right? Sean, to your initial question, like, why are organizations cautious? It's probably my fault or people like me from the marketing angle, right? We've said this for 10 plus years. I mean, shoot, back to the beginning of IVRs. Oh, contain 40, 50% of your calls with this version or this version. Yeah, that was possible. Back to our intro discussion on kind of you could do that with heavy professional services and constant maintenance of the spider web. So when people swiped the card 5 years ago for this cutting edge tech that come to find out is containing 10% of your calls and offering a very robotic voice bad experience, like, yeah, we probably overpromised 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And now people are saying, great, what's different? Like, you want me to swipe the card again on this? Are you kidding me? I'm still living with the pains of, you know, trying to stand a chat bot up on the website. So, you know, this is by no means say like, do it now or forever miss the opportunity. But as people on my product team say, the AI of today is worse than it's going to be tomorrow. That's just the pace of play of where things have gotten. This generative agentic world, or in the words of an analyst at Forrester, Max Ball, he just says, just call it modern AI. Like, that's the way to think about it, because the nuts and bolts details really don't matter. It just matters to your business. So just consider it modern AI. And what modern AI is today is really at that infrastructure layer and the maintenance layer of carving out all of those pains of past and going. And I think, Mike, exactly to your point, there's data readiness, there's business readiness. And that comes down to creating a playbook, right? It's good to be cautious, especially if you've been burned or made significant investments before, but that shouldn't prohibit advancement. And I would say a bunch of companies, obviously, that we deal with, but even that we talk to, and I'm sure you all talk to, are exploring these options. And one of the best ways for modern AI to deliver an ROI is manifesting in customer engagements. And we can talk about some of those strategies of how to, start small, but it really is kind of this new era, and you don't have to boil the ocean in automation or automation for just doing it automation's sake. Said that word 3 times, but you can actually approach this in a bite-sized manner and prove the ROI, whereas that may not have been possible before. So yeah, cautiousness certainly applies with any new technology, with any new purchase. But I think you can do it in a much more consumable size now to really de-risk some of that.
Yeah. Since Mike already threw me under the bus as a marketer here, I'm going to just hit myself with the second set of tires. I think part of the problem, you spoke to it, both of you, is the hesitation. Oh, is my data ready? Something you didn't say, but I think we have messaged. I know I've done a lot of content and created, webinars and seminars around the idea of make sure you've got an AI strategy in place before you dive into this, right? You do have to make sure that your data is ready. You have to think about security. You have to think about governance and transparency and education for your employees, right? Those things are important. So we are creating a problem there because we're making it seem so scary that people get that paralysis by analysis. So the truth is there's a balance here, right? Especially when you're buying rather than building, there's a little bit more safety, in the sense that companies like Observe and there's plenty of others in the marketplace that have done that work, right? And will guide you through that process. And so it's something to be concerned about. It's something to pay attention to, but it's also not the reason to stay out of the game. Something else that I don't think you guys really touched on that at one of these live seminars that we try to scare people to be careful about getting into AI without a strategy. We spoke to a client of ours who's a huge brand name in the hospitality industry, and they don't have any kind of conversational AI in their CX journey at all. And the reason is because they want to stay closer to the customer. They feel as though they're a premium brand and they create a premium experience, and they felt in some way having AI interface with the customers when they needed support degraded that idea of them being a premium brand. Can one of you maybe speak to that? I mean, can AI actually bring you closer to the customer and make that experience feel more premium?
Yeah, I'll take first crack, and then Mike, you can correct me and clean me up here. But right, it's that white glove service that the brand you reference is trying to provide, and this is honestly about that thoughtful customer journey. Sean, I indelicately try to say automation for automation's sake, and that is a yesteryear idea of, hey, we're going to modernize the IVR as long as you pick one of these 7 words, natural language path. Now you can actually build it so the AI agent is assisting the customer and the human. And we referenced this earlier on, like, average handle times could go up now that you're handling routine questions. If I'm dealing with my preferred hotel, hospitality, airline, and when I call, I want to be greeted as such. I'm a, silver status here or gold status. And if I can get the phone call answered and routed to an expert immediately, I'm still talking to a human. But what you don't see on the background is that maybe an AI agent pre-populated the data, pulled all that information in. It landed on the agent's desktop knowing everything I'm calling about or my upcoming reservations. And that's all orchestrated in the background. So I'm still seamlessly talking to a human, but you're coordinating that activity before the call lands on that agent's desk with these updated agentic architectures. So there's that element of almost silent third party, or call collect intents and immediately route. So instead of 30 seconds of hold time, you get 30 seconds of intent gathering and still get the human, but now you're in problem solving mode rather than information collection mode. It's really about having a well thought out customer journey. And I think, to both of your points from before, this isn't even an observe pitch, but having a trusted partner that can help you analyze that and think about your plan, because this is not a software buy, not a plug and play. This is actually thinking critically about your customer journey and what you aim to deliver and how you supplement that. So if you're building it or buying it off the shelf, you tend to just kind of jam things in there and make it work. But if you can get some help from somebody who's been there and done that to really map this out, that's how you can create these unique experiences that optimize for white glove service or customer satisfaction, rather than just plugging in AI for containment's sake. Mike, I covered a little bit of everything there, but yeah, curious
No,
where I went wrong.
yeah, I'll add a little bit, but you covered most of it. I think oftentimes people think of this replacing everything. And I think what you talked about, John, is important. The customer journey, be thoughtful about that. It might make sense that improving the customer journey, making this even more white glove is, hey, let's take on just like an authentication piece of this workflow. We're still going to get them very quickly to a human, but now we've taken something off in a more streamlined, automated way. So now we're not putting that on the reps and fatiguing them with these constant things. So freeing up some time so they do have more time to spend on some of these high value clients or just clients in general. So I think that it's all about being thoughtful in this. It's 100% that. And I think oftentimes we've built a lot of workflows around limitations of the technology and how we handle customer experiences. That's sort of, I have to do it this way because this is this way and I can only report on it that way and all these things. Sometimes it's like this, okay, what are we trying to get to with our clients? What are we really trying to solve for them here? If white glove is important, let's reimagine that experience a bit. And so, but I think it's this idea that is sort of all or nothing too, right? Like it doesn't have to be that. But yeah, I agree. Done right, this 100% allows you to do more white glove at scale with consistency. It's one of the ironic things around this too, right? Is we all have bad days, right? We all have bad days. And so for a human has a bad day, nobody makes a deal about it. AI can't have bad days. Well, the good news is AI, if it's set up the right way with all the right parameters and stuff, there are no bad days too. So you can actually level a lot of things up. But no, I think, John, you made a lot of great points. I think this absolutely plays hand in hand with that white glove. It's much more a mental block for companies and cultural block of how they perceive it than it is a technical block, for sure.
That same event that I was talking about, we heard from a different client that's in the gaming industry, also a fairly big name. And they said, they've implemented conversational AI for their VIPs. As a matter of fact, that's where they started. And what we heard from them was what you just said, Mike. Humans are messy. They have bad days. AI is more consistent. There's less likelihood of there being person-to-person friction that causes an interaction to go off the rails. They said some people just prefer it because it's faster, it's easier. I think there's a potentially, businesses really need to think about their market, but there's a potential generational difference in how
Yep.
the younger generations prefer to engage, and they really a lot of times don't want to engage person to person, and so dealing with an AI is potentially a preference for them. And then sometimes this client said their customers don't even know that it's AI that they're speaking to. In fact, the manager of the contact center said that she actually got an email from one of their VIPs that's a frequent caller saying, and they had a name for their conversational AI agent, right? And they said, yeah, you really need to, I can't remember the name, but you really need to give Katie a break. I call all hours, all different days of the week, and Katie's always there. She really needs some time off. And that was like a genuine remark that this person made, right? So they didn't know that it was AI. So, hopefully we've done enough here to convince people that this is not only viable, but it's actually probably beneficial and strategic for their business to make this shift, and that they can shed some of the misconceptions about the technology because it's grown and it's changed over time. So to shift and get tactile for a second, the people listening, if they've decided, okay, maybe this is worth exploring. John, could you talk about maybe what are some frameworks or benchmarks that you could recommend for kind of assessing an organization's AI maturity or readiness when it comes to a voice or a virtual agent?
Yeah. I think most organizations are probably intrigued. And again, we mentioned by this time is different, but really it comes down to what goals are you trying to solve? And the best place to start this journey is really looking at existing call flows. That data is a gold mine. So there's the data readiness of, hey, can the system know my business, my rules, my SOPs, integrations? But there's also like, what are the customers calling about? And this is further than surface level metrics of like, oh, this is a top call driver, or this is the handle time. Where does that call go? What is the experience in the CSAT through that call? So the best place to start is actually with existing conversations that are flowing through. Getting a good sense of, hey, this area should be automated or can be automated versus, this may be a high volume, but not something we should start with, gives you a roadmap to kind of get going on this project. And I'll give you an example, right? We work with a medical provider where one of the top calls is honestly around bill payments or payment plans. Looks like a very surface level opportunity to, hey, update the card, set a payment plan, do those kind of things. But when there is, cancer diagnosis, heavy treatment options, and somebody struggling to put that through, that's a call you don't want to automate. At surface level, it's a make a payment or a bills claim. But the reason for that is you click into or enrich the data with more customer context, and looking at those calls, you understand that this is probably a traumatic time and they're looking for help or something has changed financially for them. So you really need to do that homework and step back. Again, having a partner to help you think through that and not just taking a high-level pass at your call drivers, or L1 flows, can help you build that game plan. Next is it's actually really easy to get to the pilot phase these days. There's a lot of good AI technology out there. Even ChatGPT, again, you can upload your SOP and have a conversation with it, and it will know about your business. It's really incredible. But getting from pilot to production is honestly the challenge. So as you're building kind of these frameworks for evaluation and game plans to get going, think of it in the sense of, okay, assuming that it's actually easy to build conversational AI or AI that will chat with you and know your business, what do you actually need to do to trust this at scale? And those are things like deep evaluations on the conversation, not the surface level metrics of, hey, handled this many calls and it took this long and this many, fell out of containment or were dropped, but really what was the amount of guardrails hit? Or were guardrails hit? Did the agent provide a standard conversation? Did it ask follow-up questions? Using available tools to build the trust in the system, to get it to production and control it at scale, is actually a challenge we're seeing a lot just from our side, but is frankly thought about too late. I think MIT had a recent study that came out even this week around, they interviewed 200 companies that have deployed generative AI, and 95% of them were unable to tie it to any ROI. And citing the number one thing that happened is, yes, we all experimented with this, but how did it actually impact the business? And everybody had the base level project line, but they didn't think about these things of, okay, we rolled this out as a pilot, or we rolled this out to a select group of users or a certain amount of calls, but is it actually positively influencing? Is it stable? Is it, handling the right orders and procedures? That's the kind of stuff that you need to map out before you get into this. Because again, it's easy to build at this point. It's hard to get to production. Mike, yeah, curious what you think about that.
I think that those are so many good insights, and there's so many ways to take this. The last point you made there made me think about one of the, going back to the question, I guess, though, is like, so the framework or benchmarks, right? Like this maturity, where's someone at? I think this is such an interesting question, because sometimes customers have a really good sense of where to prioritize and where they're at and where that rail. And sometimes they're like, hey, we're really behind, but they're not that behind. So it's really tough to give a blanket for this, but I say a couple things, right? One of them is, if I sort of bucket this, we're talking, conversational AI specifically, but when it comes to customer experience, like there's conversational AI, this sort of voice and digital virtual agent world. And of course, Observe knows this well too, right? Being where you started, but then there's the whole world of sort of what's the impact internally, right? From a agent perspective, auto QA, agent assistance, right? All of these sort of internal auto summarization of interactions, that whole bucket. And then there's sort of these business level ones too. And so sometimes it's understanding like the customer's tolerance for risk. Because sometimes you have an executive in this project who's like, nope, I've seen and heard the horror stories about cars being given away and, the airline issue and this and that, and we can't risk that. And like, that's fine. Let's find something internal to build confidence with them where it's not exposed externally, because they're really worried about the customer perception. Other times they're like, we're not worried about that, but we don't know where to start. And I think, so it's like, there's a lot of starting points to this for sure. So it is not like a one size fits all, but some of it is where's the risk level? How mature are they in areas? I think sometimes I see clients who are like, we're ready to dive into this. And we look at like where they're at with using WFM and using some of these kind of lower level tried and true tools, and they're not even there. It's not like, hey, don't do AI. That's not our message. It's, let's just be really cautious and thoughtful about how we approach this, because they're not even mature in some of these other technologies yet. And that's not shame to them. This maturity curve is huge, right? I think part of the misnomer right now is everyone's like, oh man, everyone's like already doing, 100% conversational AI type stuff, and they're 100% auto QA, and agent assist is fully rolled. It's like, that's not the reality for the vast majority of enterprises. They're somewhere in doing parts of these things and building, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of things. So I think I don't know if that fully answers Sean, but I think there's this idea of, people are like way farther behind in where the market's at. They're not in most cases. There's not just one spot you have to start from. I've seen people start very well with sophisticated conversational AI, and other ones that started with very basic agent assist sort of things in that kind of AI spectrum in the contact center.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective. In my 18 months here at Amplix and the interactions that I've had with our clients and with the market in general, we talk a lot about aspirational technology and what it can do and how it can transform businesses. But the reality is most people are still in the infancy of that adoption curve, right? They're still trying things out. I think it's also important to remember that when you do something like a proof of concept, you're proving a concept, and there's no guarantee that that's going to get proven out, right? So don't be afraid to fail when you go into these things. It's not, John, you kind of alluded to this, it's not that expensive to spin up this technology. It's not that resource demanding. It should be done thoughtfully. I'm not saying do it haphazardly, but it's manageable, and it can be done for a relatively inexpensive cost to get in the game and get it tested out. And you might not prove the model. It might not make sense for you, but that's okay. That gets you a little further in your maturity curve, right? As far as, the question itself, frameworks and, understanding where you're at, I think Amplix does assessments, AI assessments. We have it specific to contact center and CX. We also have kind of a general AI assessment that we do through a partner, a third party. Um, as far as frameworks, the gold standard is going to be the NIST framework that the government puts out. So NIST. That's a little overwhelming looking. So again, don't let that create paralysis by analysis, but it is a starting point. And I think you both kind of alluded to this, but as with any transformational technology or really any technology transformation period, you want to take a crawl, walk, run approach to implementation. Um, so Mike, maybe just kind of talk about what does this approach look like, and how does it mitigate risk and accelerate value?
Yeah, I know, John, you touched on some of these points of like, high volume use cases, top call drivers, like if, but I think the big thing for me is start contained. Start with like an understanding of where the potential big picture can go, but don't buy. I like the ones that I see truly fail where people are like really scared is they've bitten off way too much. Like they just, and you need to get confidence in successes internally to really build momentum. And failure is not failing on this thing you bit off too much. That's going to create a lot of internal like, oh, that was a big expense, and now we got to really recalibrate. Failing on small little things, right? Proving out the concepts and and then you'll find be able to get successes there. That will build confidence. That will build momentum internally. And if you've done this right with the business case, you're also showing the ROI of continuing on these different journeys of exploration. So to me, it's about just, I don't want to say start simple, it's starting contained because it might be a more complex, but it's contained to something that you can get your arms around and really demonstrate the value on and show success. That's where I see this because the stories of success with clients that are really moving along this journey just at a really nice clip are ones where they're just winning these little teeny little fights. So they're winning the war of this transformation because they're winning these tiny little skirmishes and battles by design, not by happenstance, because it's very easy to be like, oh, well, let's just expand the scope of this and let's fold this in. And all of a sudden you've got like this massive thing that's like, a giant cargo ship and you're trying to be a speedboat on showing success. So to me, that's like at a core where that crawl, walk, run, you build off of these little things, and you will be all of a sudden you'll look back in 2 years and you'll be like, we're sprinting now. But it's because we're still like, we've built momentum and we've learned some of it too, by the way, is because you have to internally, you don't have roles for some of these things and ownership of some of these projects. So you have to like move at a pace where you can adapt some of these things. Cause like, some people are starting to like, oh, I've got an AI person or team or whatever, but those are all brand new things. Like what's the workflow? Who owns what? Like some of it is you have to get the pace right to just be able to like manage that internal kind of organizational change they have to go through.
Oh, Mike, I'm getting giddy and trying to write mental notes because I love when people see the game the same way. That is like the number one thing that I have conversations about with prospects, with our team about is, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? You don't go and try to take everything all at once. And especially when it comes to this new era, Mike, I mean, what you just said is like, you don't even have a team. You don't even know the team you need to know to have to do some
Right.
of this. You know, these are, AI agent QA engineers that are former first line reps that now can understand what a good conversation is. And if you hired it today, it wouldn't make sense. But as you build the program and go, that's the kind of stuff you need to start to look at or have come into the fold. And I guess one thing I could leave with, and like what gets me excited about this is a muscle your organization will build, starting with those small wins. And it can be things like post-call survey. When you get on the phone, you say, hey, if you stay on for a minute, can you answer a few questions about our business? You can pass that to an AI agent who has that natural language conversation. But in the process of deploying something like that, you learn what it takes to get this integrated with your telephony, to pass information back to your core systems, to build a continuous human in the loop feedback mechanism. And so really just look at some of those areas that are untouched or underserved is a great place to start on that crawl stage. And then as you start walking, you probably have existing investments in things like an IVR. As much as I bashed on it and we bashed on it, You can actually own nodes off the IVR. So press 8 for store hours or directions. You can actually implement there where it's low risk, low emotion, common questions. And again, you build the muscle and strength around that. And as the system learns and has more, and as your team gets stronger and faster at implementing this, you can move up the IVR to replace it, or you can, start taking over entire call flows. So by no means is this project like, hey, we're going to go and take 100% of calls day one. It's actually much more reasonable of, we're going to do post-call survey. We're going to see what this is like to implement. Who do I need on my team? You don't know yet, but by doing it, you figure it out. You get into production, you build that muscle, you start to bring in positions you never knew you needed or upskill the people that you currently have. And then it becomes, that sprint phase, as you said, Mike, where, hey, we're going to go and add this new use case. Actually, we're going to get containment from 65 to 75 by doing these 10 things. And you can start to really take off running. So no, don't sit down at the dinner table thinking the whole elephant must be had right away. This is truly looking for underserved areas, low risk, low emotion, and build that muscle, build that energy internally, because momentum breeds momentum. And this is so true in this new age of AI.
I love the analogy of a muscle because, there's guys out there that can squat 1,000 pounds, but if you got off the couch and never squatted before and tried to get under 1,000 pounds, it's going to crush you, right? What you need to do is you need to start with the bar and work your way up. And it's going to take some time, and it's going to take some consistency and some frequency, and maybe a little protein, but you'll get there, right? So I think that's the perfect analogy for this. But that being said, John, there's still a lot of concern around AI in general, having hallucinations and security concerns, data leakage, things like that. How are those things evolving, and should people, still fear those, and how can you control them?
Yeah, absolutely. Still fear them, but I'll tell you, it's not as horrible as internet stories make it look. I referenced AI today as better than it was yesterday, and certainly more advanced than months before. So if you go out there, you will find the internet stories of some chatbot selling a truck for $1, or just speaking in a different language or computer generated code. The way systems are architected now, hallucinations more are, broadly speaking, around like misunderstanding or inventing fact, where the system will say, well, I can't find it in the knowledge base. Let me just generate what I think could be an answer. And, that gets into compliance trouble, that gets into issues if the system goes, oh, well, you're not platinum. Well, I'm still going to refund your ticket. And the way it's kind of advanced from even a few years ago, months ago, to where it's at today, is really grounding these systems in truths at multiple points. So what that means is not only does your general LLM need strong guardrails and rules written around it, but every time a turn happens in the conversation, it's continually checking truth and being evaluated. Every time it takes an action, as in checking the knowledge base, utilizing a back-end integration, that system also has groundings in it. So instead of what has happened previously with some of these AI bots out there that use LLMs, where it's just intaking information, if it can't find it, spitting out what it thinks is right, you actually ground it at multiple points in a matter of milliseconds to say, is this good? Is this bad? Then on top of that, you sit over the entire system with some form of QA framework. And this can be an LLM as a judge, and this can be human in the loop. The goal is to try to pair both of those, because it's pretty impossible to have a human look at every conversation in detail. But LLM as a judge is actually using a third-party AI system that is evaluating every conversation. With that, it's setting rules, kind of as a supervisor over humans would, that says when a guardrail is hit, escalate the call, get it to a human, because we don't want it in this state anymore. Or if something goes wrong, like a tool call fails and an AI agent is unable to retrieve a true fact, set business rules. Hey, I'm unable to answer that, or escalate to a human again, or you'll have to call back later. Ideally not, but you can actually build those in. So providing that LLM as a judge and a human to look at all of those errors and issues as they stream through with strong fallback plans in place really helps mitigate the issues of hallucination. But again, I can't stress, you will find internet stories from chatbots of years ago that just invent things or speak gibberish. that is getting solved right within the systems. The new advancements is grounding at multiple points so that overall you have fallbacks, judges, and QA across all of it, so that if anything goes wrong or a sensitive topic is hit or a guardrail broken, rules automatically hit the eject button and get you to the right spot. Yeah, it's a deep area, but certainly, I think anybody who goes online, you can always find the negative. But the new stuff that's coming out is pretty exciting. Mike, I know you've worked with a lot of clients on this, and there's, we talked about maturity, but there's always the question of like, how do I trust this?
Yeah. I think, it's interesting. 2 years ago, when this was all very new, this was the number one question. Now this is barely in the top 10, I feel like. Not that people are ignoring security. They're not by any means. This is absolutely important. InfoSec is involved and but I think everyone's, everyone, there's a large kind of collective leveling up that we've had around our knowledge of just AI and LLMs and all the pieces of this. The average person might not know, all the nitty gritties, but all of us have sort of gotten more comfortable with kind of some of the understanding of how these things work and where things can go awry. And that's a good thing. And that will continue to grow. And then simultaneously, I think because there was such an, oh my gosh, fear of the unknown, security, wow, some of these things, the early stories of this were like the horror stories. The technology providers, Observe and others, right, focus a lot of effort around this to make sure it's transparent. The guardrails, the controls, the business rules are there. So, because I think initially everyone was like, this is just like a black box. This generative AI thing sounds like a black box. I don't know what this thing's going to say or what it's going to do. And now people have realized in the software has made it much more transparent of like how these things work and what control you can have. So I think this will continue to go. But to me, this has moved from the number one concern to way lower down the list. And part of it too is because in almost any enterprise out there, they're using generative AI in lots of parts of the business, right? Think meeting summaries and internal inquiries of things. And so, or we're using it just in our personal lives already so much. We're like, okay, I get it now. I get more of where it's good and where it's not good. I understand how these things work. So I think that's a good thing. So to me, this concern is there, but it's much lower than it was.
Yeah. We all know the famous examples of this, but I think those are famous examples because it happens so infrequently that those, kind of really garner the attention, right? And also I'll just kind of point out, I think John said this really well, but it's like the Swiss cheese model, right? Any one slice of Swiss cheese has holes in it that you can go right through, but if you stack slice after slice after slice after slice, there are no holes for you to get through, right? So it's having these kind of layers of protection or layers of checks and balances within the AI model that help protect everyone. So contact centers, they handle thousands of calls daily. What role does Gen AI play in making things more efficient in terms of operations or creating more consistency in the interactions? And how does that all kind of create more customer satisfaction at scale, Mike?
This is a softball. This is easy.
Knock it
So,
out of the park, man.
so I think this is really core to what generative AI can do for the contact center, right? Like this is what it's able to do. It can help you. We talked about ways, creating efficiency, right? By reducing cost of handle time, being able to offload certain types of workflows, create that consistency because it doesn't have the off days, right? So I think there's a ton there. But I would focus on, so I think it's absolutely the core piece, but don't underestimate still with all this, the impact of people is still very profound, right? In this, the quality of your agents still matter in most cases, right? You're still very much, for most businesses, there are going to be use cases that need humans for the foreseeable future, if not forever, right? There are people that sit on different sides of this fence and say everything will be virtual. Maybe, but I think we're a bit further from that than some of these folks think. So the quality of what made a good agent before is still very important. The quality of your frontline staff and supervisors, your QA team, administrators. And in fact, in some ways, the roles and impact of people is very different because you're going to have to transform roles and you're going to have to transform people there's not like this bench of people who are like, oh yeah, I've been working with this conversational AI technology for years. Let me come in and transform. Like that's going to have to come from within for a lot of these organizations, or augmented, right, with partners and partnerships. So it absolutely, the technology is key, but I'll go back to that. It's not like, it requires you and other resources extended from your company to get the most out of it. And you're going to have to shift some of those resources and rethink those. You gave a great example, John, of the idea. I was in Europe a couple months ago, and I've shared this a couple times because it was so interesting to me. People were talking about AI trainers everywhere there. And I was like, describe what you mean by that. Cause I don't know, it's like with anything with AI, I want to understand, like, how are you using that word? And they're like, well, what we mean is people who are building out and tuning and working on more use cases and training the conversational AI. I mean, they're basically training, just like we're coaching human agents, they're doing that with the software, right? And so that wasn't a role that existed 2 years ago, right? And they were talking about how their frontline staff are often this great career trajectory for them. So they're building out more of this structure. And where do they report? And how does that work with the QA team? So a lot of these things really, my message for a lot of customers is, I'm a big tech fan. I love it, but don't look past the human impact here of what you need to do and what you can do. People will be really afraid if they think this is just like, oh, my job's gone. That's like the glass half empty look at this. The other one is, what opportunities and roles does this create? And I think it creates a lot of them. And the organizations that can do that well and leverage the resources, orchestrate these human resources with the technology, with this generative AI, they are winning at scale with this, Sean. This is where they're really winning, is leveraging the power of the people and the humans plus the technology with generative AI. Powering that together, you've got the win-win-win story potential. So
Yeah, I think people sometimes, when they're talking about technology, they lose sight of the fact that technology is meant to be a tool to enable people, right, and to help people solve problems. But in my business, we talk about human-centered design, right, and that means just keeping the human and their needs and their behaviors and their wants and desires and feelings um, at the center of the things that you do. And so I would encourage enterprises that do start to adopt this kind of technology to do the same when they're designing their customer experiences and inserting AI into that, and any other technology really, is to keep the human at the center of that experience and at the center of that journey. And that human is their customer, but it's also their employees, as you pointed out, Mike. And don't focus so much on the metrics that you forget the people and that you forget the experience, because that's also the danger of this thing. There's so much potential for cost savings by leveraging AI and efficiencies and things like that, right? And so you might start looking more at your CSAT score than you do at the smile on the face of the customer, and that's a mistake. Would you agree, John?
Yes, vehemently agree. Vigorous nods for me as you both cover that. And I think what is most exciting, if I was in a practitioner or business's shoes, listening to this, evaluating what do I do here, is kind of three things. Number one, if I'm even thinking about this kind of technology, this really is a driving force to step back and reset on what that customer journey should be, right? No longer is it like, well, we have to maintain the CCAS IVR in this fashion, and I got to have 10 people on this, and I got to have, I know I'm going to have rep churn. I got to get ready to revamp my L&D. This is actually, wait a minute, let's step back. Like, what does it actually mean to deliver a great experience from start to finish within the support center, the contact center, and that is not always easy to do, to step back and say, how do we want to serve people? Not let's plug the pieces we have. So that's number one. Number two is the actual human agent experience. You both referenced this, but I believe it's the number one cited reason for churn for contact center agents is, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's basically like the job is mundane and routine.
yeah.
When I'm being evaluated, or I have to go through 6 weeks of onboarding, and every 3 out of every 5 calls is like something findable on the FAQ page of the website. Humans that sign up for these jobs get value, or at least I know I did when I did it, feel value actually helping people. And then you take 60% of your calls on like something that's Googleable, that just drains you. So when you're building and implementing AI that's going to handle these, it's also a huge opportunity to upskill your humans to do the more complex conversations, to really, make your business stand out, where that great experience means something. So you can upskill your human agents. You can provide them with more meaningful work. You can handle the routine, mundane with the AI agents. Now you create this hybrid workforce. And then the third part, Sean, you nailed, is like upskilling and moving. Like, what does it look like to manage these systems, to be a prompt engineer? Just because it says engineer doesn't mean I have to know code. It just means I know how to wow, I can't even say it, carefully articulate a well-crafted prompt for an AI agent to take on new use cases or handle a different conversation. And the people who know how to do that are the people already running SOPs within your contact center. So those three things I think are fantastic. You get to reset your expectations across the board on the customer experience. You get to up-level your existing humans to handle more meaningful and positive conversations directly with customers. And then you can actually bring those humans along to grow this AI program with you. Like that is a foundational project you're taking on, where it's not just buying software, it's actually rethinking the way you choose to provide CX and learning and development across your org.
And I think those are all the things that turn this AI investment, right? This investment in technology into something that really elevates the customer experience, the employee experience, agent effectiveness, but really it makes it a strategic investment in the business and the brand, right? Because creating these kind of experiences, having these kind of skilled employees, because you've been able to offload some of the dumb mundane stuff and get them upskilled and uptrained. Those are the things that are going to help you create the kind of experience that can differentiate you in the marketplace. And ultimately, I something that excites me about customer experiences, I think it really is a brand play. So I think businesses should really look at it that way, and it's an opportunity to stand out, differentiate, create a strategic advantage. So last question, guys. We've been going a while. If anyone's still listening, what would you say to them should be their priorities in the next 6 to 12 months to stay ahead of the evolution of AI and to accelerate their adoption?
I'll start with this one, John, and you can add and correct. And by the way, Sean, I think you need to like trademark that phrase. CX is a brand play. I love that. That's a golden statement. I love that.
It is.
I wrote it down in my notes here because I'm gonna use that now.
Well, this is
give you
royalties, and now it's copywritten, so I will enforce.
But look, this is tough, right? But I think moving forward in at least some capacity, these contained fashions that we talked about, I like to think of AI in the contact center space in the three buckets, right? It's like impacting the customer, right? So virtual agents. Impacting the agent directly, right? So agent assist, coaching, real-time analysis, auto summarization, those things. And I think then impacting the business. All of those touch each other. So a good customer experience still impacts the agent, which impacts the business. They're all interrelated, but I think of those kind of lanes of AI in the contact center. And you got to move the ball forward. To me, in the next 6, 12 months, a company that's staying without falling far behind, you've got to be moving forward in some capacity in each of these areas. Because number one, you can. These things interrelate. And if you're working on one, you can help one. The other thing though, is they all help each other, right? So if you're working on, I'm doing better with my agents and my coaching, and I'm doing auto QA, it's giving me a whole wealth of knowledge of how to improve my customers on the front end of the process. So how do I rethink of my design better on the front end of this journey? And then I can use that to then feed into that, right? So, and then on the business side, right, the analytics, reporting, trends, and all these sort of things going on, right? You're surfacing up data around this, and you're understanding better our customer journey, the voice of our customer, what's going on. So to me, I think we're at a point where a year ago I would have said, hey, focus in on one of these lanes to move the ball. Now I'm like, I think you need to focus right now kind of simultaneously on moving the ball forward in each of these categories. They are so interrelated. A lot of the technology overlaps into it. So if you're working on one project, and I think at this point, the rate of acceleration is starting to really ramp up here. I I will give you an anecdote, which is probably 50% of our contact center technology transformation projects right now are centered around these AI focused areas. It's not centered around, like, we do a lot of still CCAS and sort of the general, voice and routing and WFM and all these things, but like 50% of these now are focused just on some of these AI lanes. And that's a huge change from a year ago. And so that means companies are starting to adopt and adapt. And you don't want to be the one who's like looking back and be like, hey, because at the end of the day, the ones who are doing this right now are going to get that sort of win-win-win. And they're going to be able to reduce some of the cost while improving CSAT. And if you're playing from behind, you're going to run out of businesses will run out of runway. It's going to be sad because there will be businesses that were great businesses that will be a shell of themselves in a couple of years because they just didn't get on this. Sad to say, because those are like great brands and people's jobs. Now, new jobs and other things will open up. But I really strongly believe, like, if you're not moving this forward in these areas right now, you're going to be in trouble as a business. This is not a time, and they've heard it, they've heard the hype, and right. So it's like, yeah, the boy cried wolf. I get it. I know that, kind of fairy tale, right? But I'm serious on this. I think 100%, like, we're seeing it happen, play out right now. So my thing is move the ball forward in the customer side of where AI can impact, in the agent side, and on the business side, and do that simultaneously in some capacity, at least in the next 6 to 12 months. And you'll be on a path towards building. And if not, I'd be worried about your business.
Consumer buying power and spending is shifting to younger and younger generations as time goes on, and it's very soon going to sit with the digital natives and the people that expect this kind of experience. And
Yep.
so I think that's a fair caution. How about you, John?
Yeah, I may take a more existential approach, but Sean, you just noted it. I think consumer expectations, everyone said every 5 years, never been higher. But think about it. I can get a package delivered to my door in 2 hours. I can leave a review on a restaurant that I had a bad experience on without ever telling the wait staff what happened. I can do a whole lot of different things with the commoditization speed the modern economy delivers. And how this relates to AI agents in our conversation today actually relates to the business, where human conversations and authenticity will now matter the most for your business. Creating that one-to-one connection um, of delivering meaningful support or meaningful conversation between two humans is going to, I believe, be one of the most important things a business can do for the next 5 to 10 years, where I actually feel like I belong. I need to spend my money and my time with this brand. And Mike, you laid out very similar to how I picture where you can deploy AI within the contact center. Um, Getting started on any one of those three in the spirit of optimizing human conversations, whether it is QAing, using AI to QA your existing human conversations, so you can actually understand what's going on and help reps get better. So when they do talk to customers, they're on brand, they're empathetic, they're ready to go with knowledge. Whether it's assisting in real time with kind of the co-pilot world of, hey, in the middle of a call, if it's getting off the rails or knowledge is needed, pushing that ball forward so your human reps or AI agents on the front end, which we've covered a lot today, optimizing the customer's time to get their questions answered or land at the right human's desk. Whatever you can do to help create authentic, meaningful engagement in human conversation is going to help set your brand apart. So what do you need to do in the next 6 to 12 months? Take that step forward, build that muscle. We talked about this. You won't get it right. It is a proof of concept. Doesn't mean it's a committed concept. Take that leap, get things moving. You'll learn a lot more by failing in that process or trying that process, so that as technology evolves, even if you're not ready today, you know who to take along that journey with you. You know the steps it takes to implement some of this transformational technology. Again, this stuff is not buy it off the shelf and plug it in. This isn't an office printer. This is technology that grows and adapts. So if you don't have that muscle and you do wait for the 12 months or longer, that's just further that you're going to have to get back, back on track and catch up to speed. So yeah, use this time to really try stuff out, push the ball forward, and optimize that human authentic conversation. That would be my advice.
Yeah, we for decades have talked about the acceleration of technology being exponential, but this is an area where it truly is exponential in the truest sense of the word. So get in now before that gap continues to grow. Guys, thanks so much. I appreciate your time, your expertise. This was awesome. Mike, you want to just give a quick pitch for Amplix? Anyone wants some help with this? Where should they go?
Yeah. I mean, look, these conversations are where we guide customers, right? What we talked about, John and I gave the high level and some of the themes, but your business and your state are unique to you. Your transformations you're going through, your priorities. This is where we feel like we've got a great partnership with Observe and other technology providers to bring the right tech to the table. But how do we make a plan around this? How do we strategize around this? How do we pull this off? So talk to us. That's what we do, right? So we've got kind of the frameworks, the examples, the successes, right? Of knowing where to start, how to make this successful, how to get the buy-in internally, how to build the business case. All of that kind of stuff is what we bring to bear, as well as the partnerships with leaders in this space. Because I could tell you too, another challenge is having to go this alone, and you start searching and you're like, there's a lot of players in here. Who's real, who's not, right? And so knowing players like Observe that are real, that have done this, that have longevity, that have investments in the right areas, that have successes, that's where we can help kind of make that matchmaking happen. And then all the work begins from there, right? Implementation of that and tuning of that and optimization and getting more out of that and taking the next step. This is a journey. This is not a destination. There's no end point on this. So, if you want a guide who can help you on this journey, that's what Amplix is. That's our role.
If you're going to climb a mountain, it helps to have a Sherpa. John, you want to give a quick pitch for your new product here?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thank you, Mike. Thank you, Sean. And at Observe, we love working with Amplex. From our side, we're thrilled to bring you, obviously, AI agents to automate conversations in a human-like and empathetic way. We brought this to market about a year ago, really based on our deep understanding of human-to-human conversations. We tailor it around your business, and we spend a lot of time working with you, not just as a technology provider, but a trusted partner to work with our friends at Amplex and with your business to understand what does it mean to really bolster your customer experience journey and optimize your human agents time. Would be happy to chat with you all and show you more how we can help rethink your digital chat or voice-based conversations and create a AI agent that matches your needs.
Look at that. Right on message like every good marketer should be.
Always.
Thanks for your time, guys. Appreciate it.
I guess.
Thank you.